Okay, dear student, let's go to identification of research problem. Uh, in this, we're going to identify what I say a research problem. As we said before, it's a problem that makes a researcher do research. When you see something and you think that you should look for a solution, or should look for something why something is happening, is when you find a research problem. So this fact that research start from some problem, the research journey start from identification of the problem. First, you have to identify the problem, and now you research why that problem exists. So all research start from a problem. To work on that specific problem, only the identification is not sufficient. It is necessary for the researcher to define that problem in more practical terms. Literature review helps the researcher in defining the research problem so that it can be measured in its true sense. When say the literature review, for example, you have seen the problem, you may think that it's the first time for you to see the problem, but you may go down and refer. Was there this problem before? And if there was this problem before, what did they do? Why did they think it was a reason? Maybe now, to your level, you're going to find a new reason or facts which is quite different from what they established before. That's why you have to refer what it has been done when you are doing a procedure in solving a problem or in doing your research. That's why you say it is necessary for the researcher to define that problem in more practical terms. And a literature review helps the researcher in defining the research problem so that it can be measured in its true sense. And when you do this research, in so many ways, there are attributes, there are situations, or there are factors that you measure or you compare. And this factor in which you measure, you compare, we call them variables. So a variable is a characteristics that takes on different values or condition for different individuals. Variables are of different types. We have dependent variable, which are the variable that we measure to determine if independent variable has an effect, such as science, achievement. The dependent variable is what is affected by independent variable. When we say dependent variable is affected by independent variable, for example, student performance inategemea na ufundishaji wa mwalimu, si ndio? Lakini wanafunzi wanaweza kufaulu zaidi kama mwalimu atafundisha zaidi, lakini watafeli kama watafundishwa. Tumeelewana? So we have two variables hapo, wangefundishwa au wasinge nini, wangefundishwa au wange perform, wasingefundishwa wasingeweza kufanyaje, kuperform. So their performance depend on what? Teaching. Are we together? Their performance depend on teaching. So now we have two variables, performance and teaching. Up here there. We have independent variable and dependent what? Variable. But we have seen dependent variable and independent variable often simply a classifying variable, classifying the individual of the search study. For example, if we are looking at the student achievement in science using some new teaching methods, that the teaching method will be an independent variable and the achievement of the student is dependent variable. We can see at that example. as when you compare to what I've tried to elaborate, you get a clear picture of dependent and independent variable. Controlled variable. Controlled variables are independent variable. They are controlled variable only if their effects are determined. Example, controlled in the example of science achievement, the learning style of the student is an organismic variable, as it would probably appear as an intervening variable. For example, a treatment or program or course. Are we getting? The control variable, for example, the achievement of student, it will measure the teaching methodology. Always see, when students perform, we say this teaching methodology is good, just because the student has performed it. And we call the performance or the all result as the control what? Control variable. We have exogenous variable, which is related to dependent or independent variable, but is not part of the experiment. Is related to dependent or independent variable, but is not part of the experiment. Sometimes there are so many variables when you do something, For example, huyu mwanafunzi anafundishwa into this new teaching methodology, and we do expect our student to perform when other factors are constant. For example, we expect when a student are not sick, are we getting? When a student appear attend classes, are we getting? But sometimes we may ignore them, although they are related to dependent or independent variable. But according to our experiment, they are not part of. Are we there? We have a moderator variable, which is related to independent and dependent variable and has an impact on dependent variable. In such a situation, it becomes an interacting variable also. Moderator variable is related to the independent and dependent variable and has an impact on dependent variable. In such a situation, it becomes an interacting variable. It's not only to the side of those who are expected to perform, but in this teaching methodology, there is someone who is moderating. Are we getting? So also, there are other attributes into both variables. Are we getting? Into both variables. There are some variables which are independent and variables which are dependent to both sides. And this is the same with the moderator variable is related to independent or dependent variable and has an impact on dependent variable. In such a situation, it becomes an interacting variable also. Let's see constructing hypothesis. A hypothesis is a specific statement of prediction, which is also called an academic guess. It describes in concrete rather than in theoretical terms what you expect will happen in the research. Not all studies have thesis. Sometimes research is designed to be exploratory. In such a case, there is no formal hypothesis. A single study may have one or many theses. What does it mean when someone tells you hypothesis? Are we getting? This is an academic guess. For example, you have seen the problem and you also have into your mind this problem might be caused to ABCD. But when you do your research, you want to prove, is that what you think is right? Are we getting? No, you want to verify what you actually think. Are we there? That's why we call hypothesis as an academic guess. So before even you do your research, actually you have something into your mind in which you think this is. We have a null thesis or null hypothesis, which is the hypothesis in which there is no relationship between two or more variables, and it is symbolized as HO. In the thesis in which there is no relationship between two or more variables, and it is symbolized as HO or H0. A research hypothesis or the alternate hypothesis proposes a relationship between two or more variables and symbolized as H1. When there is a relation between variables, the surface is called H1. When there is no relation between variables, it is called H0. And we have direction hypothesis, which is one-tailed. You assume that by manipulating the independent variable, the dependent variable will change in specific direction. You can predict if this change will be positive or negative. And this direction hypothesis, it's like when one variable change, we expect another variable to change. Are we getting? Especially independent variables. Are we getting? One is depending on the other. One is depending on the other. But when we come to independent variable, are we getting? We actually get a null thesis. Are we getting? Are we getting? We can see one variable is not dependent to the other. You have two variables, and when one changes, no effect on the second. It is just there. Are we getting? And this is what we call HO. So when we say when a relation of between two or more variable, here we have what? Alternate thesis and directional thesis. It's when one variable, depending on the other, change of one variable cause effect to the change of the other variable. We also have non-directional research thesis, which is two-tailed. You assume that by manipulating the independent variable, there will be a change in the dependent variable. You assume that by manipulating the independent variable, there will be a change in the dependent variable. You cannot predict if this change will be positive or negative. Let's come to writing a statement of research problem. For example, you have that academic guess on ground and you think that you can do something on that. Are we getting? Then you come to the fact you have to write the statement of the problem. What is the statement of the problem? We say a good researcher or a good research statement makes clear to the reader what issue the research is dealing with. Ideally, a research statement should be presented in one sentence. A research problem statement is to the point, focused, and measurable. It is not ambiguous and abstract. When you do your research, if someone read your research problem, should get the clear picture of actually what you are doing. It is short and clear. And most of the time, the research problem, it is just in one statement. Are you getting? A research problem statement is to the point, straight to the point, focused and measurable. It is not ambiguous and abstract. It is clear. Whoever read this understand what actually your study is all about. Let's go to formulation of this problem statement. The problem statement describes the nature of the problem, What is the discrepancy between what is and what you prefer the situation to be? Magnitude, size, data needed. There we see distribution. Who is affected, where, when, severity, intensity, and consequences. When someone read a problem or statement, should get the clear picture of what is in there. You should be able to describe the nature of the problem, what is discrepancy between what is and what you prefer the situation to be, magnitude and size of the data needed. And we come to distribution, who is affected, where and when. Then the severity or intensity and consequences. Preparation of the statement of the problem. State the possible contributing factor and how they might lead to problem. List them first, then explain how each could lead to problem. State effort done previously to solve the problem and the effects. Measure test taken and outcome of the measure. Let's see selection of a research problem. At the outset of your research, make sure you have identified a worthwhile problem which has to be previously answered. Since research is always about some problems, identification and selection of this problem is most crucial in designing a research proposal. According to Tuckman, 1994, although selecting the research problem is one of the most difficult steps in research process, it is unfortunately the one for which the least guidance can be given. However, according to Tuckman 1994, a problem statement must have the following characteristics. Tuckman has tried to extract or to explore some characteristics of a problem statement which you must have. And he said he should ask about the relationship between two or more variables. It should ask about relationship between two or more variables. It should be clearly and unambiguously stated. It should be stated in question form or alternatively in the form of an implicit question, such as the purpose of this study was to determine whether. Are we getting? When it should be stated in question form or alternative in the form of implicit question, such as the purpose of this study was to determine whether, or it should be testable by empirical method. That is, it should be possible to collect data to answer the question asked. It should not represent a moral or ethical position. It should not represent a moral or ethical position. That will say it should be testable by empirical methods. But also said it should be tested in question form or stated in question form. Implicit questions. For example, the purpose of this study was to determine whether you put your variables. Don't we get it? You put the variables was to determine whether A, B. Are we getting? Up here together there, we're gonna see more examples, and when we're gonna write a problem of statement by our own. So there is something, there are quiz that I prepared for you. You can see I'll do some as giving an example to you. Then later you try on your left best to write whatever comes into your mind and try to write more 5 or 4 problem of statement on your own. So apart from this guideline provided by Tuckman, it can also be useful if it ensures that the problem that you have identified is of some theoretical or practical significance. It can also be helpful from the wide range of potential problem for start. At the initial stage, You narrow the range to problems that are relevant to your academic, professional interest, and current level of research skills. Statement of the problem examples. A problem can be stated in a form of an explicit or an implicit question. For example, the study examined whether students taught by direct method achieved higher reading score than those taught by communication approach. This is implicit question. The study examined whether students taught by direct method achieved higher reading score than those taught by communicative approach. You can see how implicit is, and this is an implicit question. Or what is the relationship between motivation and achievement? This is an explicit question. So this problem of statement may be implicit or explicit, which means may follow the examples or the example above, or explicit to follow the example down. As we say, the study examine whether students taught by direct method achieved the higher reading score than those taught by communication approach. You can see there are two variables there. Two variables. And the control variable is what? Score. As we can see, whether student taught by direct method, one, direct method, and communicative approach. These are our what? Two variables in which are compared. Are we getting? And we come to the second explicitly. What is the relationship between motivation and achievement? We also have the variables which are motivation and achievement. But when you contract hypothesis here, you may also, or you may already have something into your mind. Maybe achievement and motivation are positive related, or achievement and motivation are negative related, or motivation and achievement have no relation. Are we getting? So let's see what the hypothesis is. What is hypothesis? Once you have identified and started the problem, the next step is to create a hypothesis. Putting it as in a simple way. You have already identified the problem, and you have already created what the problem of statement. Then from there, it's thesis. That's what we call academic guess. For example, when we're going to say what is the relationship between motivation and achievement, you already know the relation of motivation and achievement. There is already something into your mind. You know, if someone is motivated, he achieves more. Or if someone is motivated, he achieves less. Or if someone is motivated or not, no effect. You have that into your mind. So, putting it as in a simple way, thesis is a wise or educated guess. It is an assumed answer to the question proposed in a research problem statement. However, it is only an assumed answer or an expectation that is tested in the study later on. You must bear in mind that theses differ from an observation which represent the outcome actually found. You must bear in mind that hypothesis differs from an observation which represent the outcome actually found. Let's see how to form hypothesis. Although I explained a little above, but let's go see. Focusing on your research problem, you can create the hypothesis. Simply try to give direct answer to the question posed in the problem statement. For example, research. Maybe you have question one. What is the relationship between motivation and achievement? Thesis one, you have motivation and achievement are positively related. However, this is not the only possible guess you can make. You may assume that thesis or motivation and achievement are negatively related. It's also true. That thesis shows some positive or negative relationship between the variables. As far as the question of structuring a thesis is concerned, there can be varieties of ways. For instance, research question 2. The student learn more from a directive or non-directive teacher? Thesis, directive teacher give more effective instruction than non-directive teachers. It is also important here to introduce you to the null thesis, which it is a small little creature who says, I represent no relationship within the variable that you are studying. For example, as we see in achievement, motivation and achievement. Or say, someone will say there is no relation between motivation and achievement. We get it. And that is what we call a null thesis. And you see there is no relation between motivation and achievement. I'll be together there. This is a very important concept for you to understand. We're getting switching to understanding of this, which means you got the scope of actually what you are supposed to. Where do theses come from? Given a problem statement, are A and B related? A researcher can construct 3 possible theses. Yes, A increases, so does B. A increases, so does B. And we said when you go to variables, you can see which type of variable are these. The change of one variable affect the other variable. Or you can say A increase and B decrease. Oh no, A and B are unrelated. When A increase, there is no effect on B. When there is effect on B, there is no effect on A. So there is no any relation between A and B. So the number of possible theses may possibly increase as the number of variables increase. The more variable you have, the more academic guess you have, or the more answers you have. Assessment. I should do this assessment on your own. Identify the independent and dependent variable in the following situation. This is for you. You should identify the independent and dependent variable in this following situation. A university teacher is interested in determining the best way to teach introductory technology course and ensure that our students have learned the material. Formulate the thesis or hypothesis for the following 2 situations. What effect does viewing violence on television have on boys? What effect does viewing violence on television have on boys? And 2, situation 2, a sanitation department is nearby and the smell is coming from the same direction. The sanitation department does a series of steps to process the sewage and wastewater. Right thesis start with if dash then dash. If you understand the lesson above, then it will be very simple for you to construct this, to do this assessment on your own. This is the first session as we see how to formulate a problem of statement and how to extract or to write thesis or hypothesis from the problem of statement. Hope you all understand this, and Let's go through and see.